We're here now in the National Botanic Gardens, and it was originally set up for research into horticulture and agriculture. In this area here, this is called Wild Ireland. This is trying to showcase the beauty and the diversity of our native flora, whereas elsewhere in the gardens we have more exotic species. Say in the palm houses we have species from the tropics, and in the Arboretum we have species from all over the world. The connection between An Gorta Mór and the Botanic Gardens is actually the former director, David Moore. David Moore spotted the blight affecting potatoes in the gardens, spotted it across Dublin and seeing reports across Ireland as well. The predominant view was that it was caused by the atmospheric conditions. Although the fungus co-occurred with this, they didn't think the fungus caused it. And so it was actually initially Moore thought, okay, he went along with the general idea that it was atmospheric conditions, and he was doing experiments on the effects of electricity on the plants. And then it was a guy called Berkeley in the UK, he figured out that it was actually a fungus, and then Moore, as he did more research, he realised that this was the case. And so he was the first person in Ireland to go against the standard idea that was predominant at the time and say, no, it's the fungus, we need to deal with tackling the fungus. And he also showed that it was transferring to other plants, not only to potato, but he found it in others. So potato is in the Solanaceae family, and he found it on tomato and other species related. A key thing though in the famine was our reliance on essentially one genotype of potato. If you look at biodiversity, you're talking about variation from genes to species to landscapes. And that's where the biodiversity was so reduced by looking at one genotype or a limited set of genes in the lumper potato. Since then we have developments in terms of breeding of potatoes to try and find resistant varieties. And what they tend to do with all sorts of breeding is you go back to crop wild relatives or other wild relatives of your crop species and try and draw in some resistance or some diversity. And so it's just showing how it's key to have genetic diversity in our crops. We think of it as a lofty concept, biological diversity. It's actually just variety of life. That's really all it is. We don't really know what all the key ingredients are, or the little elements of an ecosystem are fully. Just because we don't have any use for a variety of plant, we should still attempt to conserve it. There's this thing we refer to as plant blindness. Plants are just there. They provide everything we need, and we don't really need to deal with them as such. But the reality is that we do need to conserve them. We do need to help them along if they're threatened in some way. So we have to sort of get over that plant blindness and realize that although they're just this background wash of green, we do need to protect this as a bigger thing, part of the environment. Here we have ex situ populations. It's almost like a zoo. We've reserves of plants that sometimes will be extinct or close to extinction in the wild. And also we studied the genetic diversity of plants. So an example would be sea pea, which is related to our peas that we eat. This would be something that we want to look at the genetic diversity inherent in that, and is it potentially useful down the line for breeding, for example. The seed bank, the plan is to have, when it's fulfilled, seeds from all native species. So these will be wild species, nothing particularly special about them. They don't have to be useful in any way. It's really a growing movement across the world. It's regenerating in a way. A lot more people are starting national seed banks. It's just to capture really a set of genotypes from the Irish flora. Initially we'll just be getting one example of each species, but in time we'll build up larger genetic complements so that we have good examples across the island from all the provinces, and then potentially more depending on habitat variability. The growing movement at the moment, young people seem to be really interested in the environment, more so than my generation growing up. They don't second guess it. They think, yes, we should be doing this, we should be protecting stuff, which is really encouraging.